High Commander Vextar stood before the massive viewing screen in his command center. The screen showed the combat crucible floating in space like a giant metal moon. For 3,000 years, this facility had tested warriors from across the galaxy. For 3,000 years, it had never been beaten. The crucible was the size of a small city. Its metal walls were thicker than most starship hulls. Inside were hundreds of rooms filled with deadly traps, combat robots, and puzzles that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy. Every alien species that wanted to join the Galactic Defense Corps had to send their best soldiers to face this test. None had ever completed it. Vextar's forearms moved across his control panel as he reviewed the statistics. The Korthak Empire had sent their strongest warriors, beings who could crush steel with their bare hands. They lasted 23 minutes. The crystal beings of Nexus Prime, who could think at the speed of light, managed 31 minutes. The shape-shifting Morphins, who could adapt to any environment, reached 39 minutes before giving up. The record holder was the warrior poet Thaindal from the Sword Worlds. He had fought alone for 47 minutes before the Crucible's defenses overwhelmed him. That was 800 years ago. No one had come close since. Now, as Vextar looked at his screen, he tried not to laugh. The latest application for testing came from a species calling themselves humans, from a small blue planet called Earth. Their planet was so far from the galactic center that most beings had never heard of it. The application files showed creatures that looked almost fragile. They had no claws, no natural armor, no venom, and no psychic powers. They stood upright on two legs like many species, but they seemed weaker than most. Their skin looked soft and easily damaged. Their bones were made of simple calcium, not the metal-infused skeletons of proper warriors. "Sir," said his aide, a young Zephyrian with bright blue scales, "the human delegation has arrived. Should I bring them to the briefing room?" Vextar nodded, still amused by the whole situation. He had agreed to this meeting more out of curiosity than any real hope. The humans claimed they had been fighting wars on their planet for thousands of years. Every species said that. Most had no idea what real combat meant until they faced the Crucible. The briefing room doors opened, and 3 humans walked in. Vextar studied them with his large golden eyes. The first was a female with short brown hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple military uniform with several badges. The second was a tall male with dark skin and a serious expression. The third was shorter with gray hair and scars on his visible skin. "I am Captain Sarah Chen," the female said, stepping forward. "This is Colonel Marcus Webb and Sergeant Major Tom Rodriguez. We represent the United Earth Military Coalition." Vextar gestured for them to sit. The chairs in the room were designed for various alien body types, and the humans seemed to fit reasonably well. "I have reviewed your application," Vextar began, his voice translator making his words understandable to the humans. "You wish to attempt the combat crucible. Do you understand what this means?" Captain Chen nodded. "We understand that no species has ever completed your test. We also understand that success would allow humanity to join the Galactic Defense Corps as full military partners." "And you understand the risks?" Vextar continued. "The Crucible is not a game. Beings have died attempting it. Others have been permanently injured. Some have suffered mental breaks from the stress and never recovered." "We understand the risks," Colonel Webb said quietly. "Our species has faced many challenges. We believe we can handle whatever your test presents." Vextar leaned back in his chair. Around the galaxy, military leaders would pay good money to watch this attempt. The betting pools had already started on the military networks. Most bets were on how quickly the humans would surrender. The longest odds anyone would give them was 15 minutes. "Very well," Vextar said. "You have permission to attempt the Crucible. You may bring up to 12 soldiers. You have 1 month to prepare. During this time, you may study the basic layout of the facility and review footage of previous attempts." The humans exchanged glances. "We appreciate the opportunity to study," Captain Chen said. "May we ask how many soldiers other species typically bring?" "Most bring 1, Vextar explained. their greatest warrior. A few have brought 2 or 3. The Morphins once brought 5, but they all worked as a single unit due to their hive mind. We would like to bring the full 12, Captain Chen said. Vextar's translator made a sound that indicated amusement. 12 soldiers would just mean 12 failures instead of 1. But he nodded agreement. One more thing, Sergeant Major Rodriguez spoke for the first time. When we study the previous attempts, will we see everything? All the footage? You will see what every species sees, Vextar replied. The same basic information, the same general layouts, the same warning about the various types of challenges you will face. After the humans left, Vextar's aide approached him. Sir, should we increase security for their attempt? If 12 humans die in the crucible, it might create diplomatic problems. Vextar waved a dismissive hand. They will surrender long before any real danger. These creatures look like they would run from their own shadows. Still, make sure the medical teams are ready. We do not want to explain to their government why their soldiers were injured in a test they were warned about. In the weeks that followed, reports came back about human activity. They had requested quarters near the Crucible station and were spending all their time studying. Unlike other species who typically meditated or performed strength exercises, the humans seemed to be taking notes and drawing diagrams. They are treating this like some kind of academic exercise, reported the station commander. They have divided into small groups, and each group studies different aspects of the Crucible. One group watches combat footage, another studies the architectural plans we provide. A third group seems to be learning about our technology. Vexitar found this approach strange but not concerning. Knowledge was useful, but it could not replace strength, speed, or natural weapons when facing the Crucible's challenges. Every species had tried to outsmart the facility. None had succeeded. The betting pools grew larger as word spread throughout the galaxy. Military leaders, government officials, and civilian populations all wanted to see what would happen when the soft humans faced the impossible test. Some bets were placed on whether the humans would even enter the Crucible once they saw it up close. 3 days before the test, Vextar received an unusual request from Captain Chen. The humans wanted to know if there were any specific rules about how they had to approach the challenges inside the Crucible. Rules? Vexitar had asked, confused. Are there required paths we must take? Specific weapons we must use? Methods we cannot use? Captain Chen had explained. Vexitar told her what he told everyone. The only rule is survival. The only goal is to reach the end. Everything else is up to you. Looking back later, Vextar would realize that this conversation should have been his first warning. Most species asked about the dangers they would face. Only the humans asked about the rules they had to follow. The day of the test arrived, and viewing parties gathered across the galaxy. Military academies made it required viewing for their students. The footage would either be a quick lesson in why some species were not meant for galactic warfare, or it would be something no one expected. As Vextar prepared to watch another failure, he had no idea that he was about to witness the end of an era. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the middle of the temporary human quarters on Crucible Station. Around her, 11 other soldiers worked at portable computers, studied printed maps, and discussed plans in quiet voices. The room looked more like a military planning center than a warrior's meditation space. Rodriguez, what did you find in the engineering footage? Chen asked. Sergeant Major Tom Rodriguez looked up from his tablet. His weathered face showed the kind of focus that came from years of military service. The power conduits run along predictable paths. Most alien species ignore them, but they're not heavily shielded. A few well-placed charges could cause interesting power failures. Interesting how? Asked Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, a small woman with calloused hands who had been studying the architectural plans. Well, the combat robots need power. The energy barriers need power. The sensor systems need power, Rodriguez said with a slight smile. Take away the power, and a lot of their impossible challenges become just expensive metal. Across the room, Corporal David Kim looked up from his computer screen. Speaking of the robots, I think I found something. They all use the same basic operating system. It's advanced, but it follows patterns. Every 12 minutes, they run diagnostic checks that last 4.3 seconds. During those checks, their reaction time drops by 60%. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, who had been quiet while reading, finally spoke up. Has anyone noticed that every single species that attempted this test used the same basic approach? The room went quiet. Chen walked over to Morrison's station, where he had several video screens showing footage from previous attempts. Look. At this, Morrison said, pointing to the screens. The Korthak warriors, the crystal beings, the Morphans, even the legendary Thaindal. They all enter through the main corridor, fight through the challenges in order, and try to overpower everything they encounter. It's like a video game, said Corporal Lisa Zhang, the team's communications specialist. Everyone assumes there's only one way to play. Chen nodded slowly. Show me the building schematics again, Santos. Santos pulled up the three-dimensional map of the crucible on the main screen. The facility was enormous, with hundreds of rooms, connected by corridors, ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and utility passages. Every species follows the same route, Chen said, tracing the path with her finger. Main entrance, Corridor A, Challenge Room 1, Corridor B, Challenge Room 2, and so on. But look at all these other passages. Maintenance tunnels, said Private Mike Johnson, who had spent 10 years as a building engineer before joining the military. Every large facility needs them. They're probably not heavily defended because they're not supposed to be used by test subjects. Because every other species fights fair, added Rodriguez with a grin. Dr. Emily Foster, the team's medic and the only non-combat soldier in the group, had been studying the medical reports from previous attempts. The injury patterns are interesting, she said. Most species get hurt in the first few rooms because they're trying to fight things that are designed to be unbeatable in direct combat. What if we don't fight them directly? Asked Private Alex Turner, a former police SWAT officer. Chen felt a familiar excitement building. It was the same feeling she got when a complex military problem suddenly showed signs of having a solution. Keep going, Turner. Look, in police work, if someone barricades themselves in a building, we don't usually kick down the front door and charge in shooting. We cut the power, use tear gas, come in through windows, whatever it takes to control the situation safely. Sergeant. First Class Diana Cooper, who had been listening while cleaning her weapons, looked up. Are you suggesting we treat this like a hostage situation instead of a gladiator fight? Why not? Turner replied. The goal is to reach the end of the facility. Nobody said we have to fight every single challenge the way they want us to. Over the next week, the human team developed what they privately called the plan. Unlike other species, they didn't focus on becoming stronger or faster. Instead, they studied every piece of information they could find about the Crucible's systems, layout, and previous challenges. Rodriguez and Johnson worked together to identify structural weak points and power systems. Kim and Zhang studied the computer networks and robot behaviors. Santos and Turner mapped alternative routes through maintenance areas. Morrison and Cooper planned tactical approaches that had never been tried. The key thing to remember, Chen told her team during one planning session, is that this facility was designed to test alien warriors who think like alien warriors. We don't. How do we think differently? Asked Foster. We're sneaky, Rodriguez said. Other species see a locked door. They break it down or find the key. We pick the lock, crawl through the window, or just blow up the wall next to it. We're also team players, added Morrison. Most species send their greatest individual warrior. We're sending a team that's trained to work together. The humans requested permission to visit the Crucible for a pre-test inspection. Vextar granted it, assuming they wanted to pray or perform some human ritual before their attempt. Instead, the humans spent 6 hours taking detailed measurements, testing their equipment, and having quiet conversations that their translators somehow couldn't pick up clearly. They seemed particularly interested in areas that other species had never even looked at. They spent 20 minutes examining a maintenance panel, reported the Zephyrian observer. Then they measured the width of the ventilation grates. One of them even tested whether the ceiling tiles could support body weight. Vextar found this behavior odd but not threatening. Let them measure whatever they want. When they face the first combat robot, All their measurements will not help them. During their final week of preparation, the humans did something that no other species had ever done. They practiced. Not meditation, not strength training, but actual rehearsals of their planned approach. They set up mock scenarios in empty cargo bays, timing their movements and testing their coordination. Rodriguez practiced placing explosive charges quickly and quietly. Santos rehearsed climbing techniques. Kim worked on hacking into computer systems under time pressure. "Sir," Vexitar's aide reported, "the humans are training like this is some kind of military operation instead of a warrior's test." "Because they do not understand what they face," Vexitar replied. "When they see the true power of the Crucible's defenses, they will realize that all their planning cannot overcome superior force." The night before their attempt, Chen gathered her team for a final meeting. "Tomorrow we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to beat the Crucible. Not by being stronger than it, not by being faster than it, but by being smarter than it. The whole galaxy is going to be watching," Morrison pointed out. "Good," Chen said. "Let them watch humans show them what's possible when you refuse to accept that something is impossible." Rodriguez stood up and looked around at his teammates. "You know, in all my years in the service, I've never been part of something like this. We're not just representing Earth tomorrow. We're representing the idea that there's always another way to solve a problem." "And if we fail?" asked Foster. Chen smiled. "We won't fail, because failure isn't part of the plan." As the humans prepared for sleep, military leaders across the galaxy made final bets on how long these strange creatures would last. The general consensus was somewhere between 8 and 20 minutes. None of them had any idea that they were about to witness the most significant military event in galactic history. The humans weren't just planning to attempt the Crucible. They were planning to change everything. The main entrance to the combat Crucible opened with a deep mechanical sound that echoed through the metal corridors. Across the galaxy, millions of beings watched their screens as 12 human soldiers stepped inside the facility that had defeated every species for 3,000 years. High Commander Vexitar leaned forward in his command chair, watching multiple camera feeds from inside the Crucible. The humans moved in a tight formation, weapons ready, eyes scanning their surroundings. They looked professional but small compared to the massive corridors designed for much larger alien warriors. "Time starts now," announced the automated system. "Test subjects have entered the facility." For exactly 30 seconds, the humans moved down the main corridor like every species before them. Then Captain Chen raised her hand, and everything changed. "Execute," she said quietly into her communicator. The 12 humans immediately split into 4 groups. 3 soldiers headed left toward a maintenance panel that no previous test subject had ever noticed. 3 others moved right toward what appeared to be a solid wall but was actually a concealed maintenance hatch. 4 soldiers continued down the main corridor, but instead of walking, they began setting up equipment. The remaining 2 soldiers simply disappeared. "What are they doing?" Vexitar's aide asked, staring at the screens in confusion. Vexitar watched as Private Johnson and Corporal Zhang seemed to vanish into thin air. Then he realized they had climbed into a ventilation shaft whose entrance was hidden in shadow. "They are not following the test protocol," Vexitar said slowly. "Sir, should we remind them of the proper procedure?" "There is no proper procedure," Vexitar admitted. "I told them the only rule was survival." In the first challenge room, a massive combat robot waited. It was 12 feet tall, armed with energy weapons, and programmed with the fighting knowledge of 1,000 battles. Every species that had reached this point had tried to fight it with strength, speed, or clever tactics. All had failed. The robot sensed movement and activated, its weapons systems charging up. It expected to face warriors coming through the main entrance, ready for honorable combat. Instead, the ceiling above it exploded. Sergeant Rodriguez's carefully placed charges brought down several tons of metal ceiling tiles directly onto the robot's head. As it struggled to free itself from the debris, Staff Sergeant Santos rappelled down from the hole in the ceiling and attached additional explosives to its power core. "Fire in the hole," she said calmly. The explosion echoed through the facility. When the smoke cleared, the unbeatable combat robot was a pile of expensive scrap metal, Impossible, whispered Vextar, but the humans were just getting started. In Challenge Room 2, an advanced security system required test subjects to solve a complex mathematical puzzle while defending against laser turrets. The puzzle had been designed by the greatest minds in the galaxy and was considered unsolvable under combat conditions. Corporal Kim never even looked at the puzzle. Instead, he crawled through a maintenance tunnel until he was directly behind the main computer system. While the laser turrets searched for targets in the main room, Kim simply unplugged their power cables. "Laser turrets offline," he reported, moving to the next system. "But the puzzle," his teammate said. "We're supposed to solve the mathematical equation." "Why?" Kim asked, pulling out a small explosive charge. "The door is controlled by this computer." No computer, no locked door. The explosion was much smaller this time, but equally effective. The massive security door slid open with a cheerful beep. Across the galaxy, military academies watched in stunned silence as their impossible training scenario was reduced to a minor engineering problem. Challenge Room 3 contained what the Crucible designers considered their masterpiece, a shape-shifting maze that constantly changed its layout. Warriors were supposed to use their superior senses and reflexes to navigate through it while avoiding deadly traps. The humans took one look at the maze and ignored it completely. Lieutenant Morrison led his team to the outer wall of the room. Private Turner, who had brought a small cutting torch, began burning through the metal wall while Johnson calculated the exact distance they needed to cut. "This feels like cheating," Turner said as he worked. "Only if there are rules against it," Morrison replied. The commander said the only goal was reaching the end. They cut a hole in the wall and walked around the entire maze, emerging at the exit door in less than 5 minutes. The shape-shifting maze continued its complex dance, waiting for test subjects who would never come. By this time, alerts were sounding throughout the Crucible's control systems. The facility's artificial intelligence was sending confused reports to the monitoring station. "Sir," Vextar's aide reported, "the Crucible's AI is requesting guidance. It says the test subjects are not following expected parameters." "What parameters?" Vextar asked. "Well, it expected them to fight the combat robots, solve the puzzles, and navigate the mazes. Instead, they are breaking things." Challenge Room 4 featured a test of individual courage. Each warrior had to face their greatest fear, manifested as a realistic hologram designed to paralyze them with terror. When the human team reached this room, the fear projection system activated. Each soldier was shown a personalized horror designed to break their will. The humans looked at their projected fears for about 10 seconds. Then Sergeant Cooper pulled out her sidearm and shot the hologram projector. "Problem solved," she said, simply. "But those were your deepest fears," the facility's AI announced through speakers, sounding almost hurt. "You were supposed to overcome them through inner strength and personal growth." "We did overcome them," Cooper replied. "We identified the source of the problem and eliminated it. Very therapeutic." Challenge Room 5 required test subjects to demonstrate perfect accuracy by hitting a series of targets, while environmental hazards tried to distract and injure them. The humans entered the room and immediately identified the hazard generators, hidden machines that created wind, flying debris, and energy discharges. Rodriguez planted explosives on each machine while the rest of the team provided covering fire. When the charges detonated, the room became perfectly quiet and still. "Targets acquired," reported Private Turner, taking careful aim at the now stationary targets. "This is actually easier than our basic training course." He hit all targets in less than 30 seconds. By now, the Crucible's monitoring systems were experiencing what could only be described as electronic panic. Alarms rang throughout the facility as the AI tried to understand why all its carefully designed challenges were being solved in ways that its programmers had never anticipated. "Sir," Vextar's aide said, his voice filled with disbelief, "they have completed 5 challenge rooms in 43 minutes. Vextar stared at his screens. The previous record for reaching the 5th room was held by Thaindal, and it had taken him 39 minutes just to get that far. These humans had not only reached the 5th room faster, they had completely destroyed it. "How many rooms remain?" Vextar asked quietly. 15, sir. including the final chamber. Challenge Room 6 was designed to test leadership and sacrifice. Test subjects faced a scenario where they had to choose between personal survival and saving innocent holographic civilians. The humans looked at the scenario for about 5 minutes, discussing it quietly among themselves. Then Captain Chen made a decision that the Crucible's designers had never considered. "Zhang, can you hack the hologram system and reprogram the scenario?" "Probably," Zhang replied, pulling out her equipment. "What do you want it to do?" "Make it so everyone survives," Chen said. "The innocent civilians, us, everybody." "But that is not the point of the test," the Crucible's AI protested. "You must choose between competing moral imperatives." "No, we don't," Chen said calmly. "We just have to be creative enough to find the option where nobody dies." Zhang's fingers flew over her keyboard. Within minutes, she had reprogrammed the scenario. The holographic civilians found safe shelter. The environmental hazards mysteriously malfunctioned, and the human team advanced to the next room. "This is not how ethics work," the AI complained. "This is how human ethics work," Chen replied. "We don't accept no-win scenarios." As word of the humans' progress spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Military leaders stopped taking bets on when the humans would fail and started asking their own engineers why their supposedly perfect defensive systems could be defeated by simple creativity. The humans continued through the Crucible, turning each impossible challenge into a basic problem-solving exercise. They ignored mazes and cut through walls. They bypassed security systems by attacking their power sources. They solved moral dilemmas by refusing to accept the premises. "Sir," Vextar's aide reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "They have reached room 15, the final chamber." Vextar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Genuine surprise. No being had ever reached the final chamber. The Crucible's ultimate guardian waited there, a challenge so difficult that the facility's designers had never expected anyone to face it. "How long have they been inside?" Vextar asked. 2 hours and 17 minutes, sir." Vextar stared at his screens as 12 human soldiers stood before the final chamber of the combat crucible was enormous. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were covered with ancient symbols that glowed with their own light. In the center of the room stood something that made the previous challenges look like training exercises. The ultimate guardian was 30 feet tall and made of living metal that constantly shifted and changed shape. It had been built using technology from every species in the galaxy, incorporating their greatest weapons and their most advanced defenses. Its multiple weapon systems could fire in all directions at once. Its armor could adapt to any attack. Its artificial intelligence contained the tactical knowledge of 10,000 years of galactic warfare. No being had ever seen the ultimate guardian in person before. The Crucible's designers had built it assuming that no test subject would ever reach the final chamber. As the 12 human soldiers entered the room, the Guardian's massive head turned toward them. Its voice filled the chamber like thunder. "I am the ultimate guardian of the combat crucible. I am the final test. I am undefeatable. You will face me in single combat, as is the tradition of warriors throughout the galaxy." The humans looked at each other. Captain Chen stepped forward. "No," she said simply. The Guardian paused. Its programming had never encountered this response before. "You must face me in single combat," the Guardian repeated. "It is the only way to complete the test." "Says who?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez, walking around the Guardian's base and examining its construction. "It is the way of warriors," the Guardian insisted. "It has always been the way." "We're not your usual warriors," said Lieutenant Morrison, studying the chamber's layout. The Guardian's weapons began to charge up. Energy crackled along its arms as missile ports opened in its shoulders. "If you will not face me honorably, I will destroy you where you stand." "That's nice," said Staff Sergeant Santos, who was looking up at the ceiling with professional interest. "Hey, Rodriguez, can you give me a boost? I want to check something." High Commander Vextar watched from his command center as the humans completely ignored the Ultimate Guardian's threats and began examining the final chamber like it was a construction site they were planning to renovate, sir, his aide whispered. Shouldn't they be afraid? Vextar didn't answer. He was beginning to understand something that terrified him more than any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. These humans didn't think like warriors. They thought like engineers. In the final chamber, Corporal Kim was tracing power cables along the wall while Private Johnson examined the Guardian's base structure. Corporal Zhang had found a maintenance panel and was connecting her computer to it. Interesting, Kim called out. This whole room runs off a single main power conduit. That's efficient, but it's also a single point of failure. The structural support is impressive, Johnson added, running his hands along the Guardian's base. But look at this. They built it on a raised platform. That platform is held up by 12 support pillars. I'm into the room's environmental systems, Zhang reported. I can control lighting, ventilation, and this is interesting. I can activate the emergency fire suppression system. The Ultimate Guardian was becoming increasingly agitated. It had been programmed to fight, not to watch small creatures perform technical inspections of its home. Fight me, it demanded, firing a warning shot that left a crater in the floor near the humans. The humans looked at the crater, then at each other. Well, it's definitely powerful, Chen said calmly. Santos, what did you find up there? Santos had climbed up into the chamber's structural framework and was examining the ceiling. The lighting system uses massive energy conduits. They run right over the Guardian's position. If someone could get up there and redirect one of those conduits. Redirect how? Rodriguez asked, already reaching for his explosives. Simple, controlled demolition. Cut the supports on the east side, the whole assembly comes down right on target. The Ultimate Guardian realized what the humans were planning. You cannot attack me indirectly. Face me with honor. Honor is great, said Corporal Turner, who was positioning himself behind a structural pillar, but victory is better. Captain Chen looked around at her team. They were tired, running low on equipment and facing the most powerful combat system ever built. But they had something the Guardian's designers had never planned for. Absolute refusal to fight fair. Execute. Final plan, Chen ordered. Chaos erupted in the final chamber. Zhang activated the fire suppression system, filling the air with thick, choking foam that blocked the Guardian's optical sensors. Kim used his remaining explosives to cut the main power conduit, causing the Guardian's energy weapons to flicker and lose power. Johnson began setting charges on the support pillars that held up the Guardian's platform. The Ultimate Guardian fired blindly through the foam, trying to hit targets it could no longer see clearly. Its massive bulk made it slow to turn, and the humans used this against it. They moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough for the Guardian to target them effectively. Santos worked frantically in the ceiling structure, using her climbing experience to navigate the metal framework while Rodriguez passed her explosives on the end of a rope. Below them, the Guardian spun in circles, trying to track enemies that seemed to be everywhere at once. Power at 60% and falling, Kim reported as more systems failed. Platform supports are ready to blow, Johnson called out. Ceiling charges in position, Santos confirmed. The Ultimate Guardian, realizing it was losing, made one final desperate attack. It gathered all its remaining power and fired everything it had in all directions, filling the chamber with deadly energy beams and explosive projectiles. The humans had been waiting for this. They dove for cover behind the structural pillars and blast shields they had identified earlier. The Guardian's own attack damaged the chamber walls and ceiling, making the humans' job easier. Now, Chen shouted. Santos triggered the ceiling charges. The massive lighting assembly came crashing down, striking the Guardian's head and upper body. At the same moment, Johnson detonated the platform charges. The Guardian's base crumpled, and the 30-foot war machine crashed to the ground. But it wasn't finished. Even damaged and partially buried under debris, the Ultimate Guardian began trying to repair itself. Its living metal armor started flowing back together, and backup power systems began coming online. The humans didn't give it the chance. Private Turner, who had been quietly working his way around the chamber's edge, emerged from behind the fallen Guardian with a simple tool, a military-grade plasma cutter. While the Guardian's attention had been focused on the other humans, Turner had reached its main processing unit. "Sorry about this," Turner said politely to the Guardian, and began cutting through its central computer core. The Ultimate Guardian's voice became distorted as its systems failed. "This is not possible. I am undefeatable." "You were undefeatable by warriors," Captain Chen said, walking over to the dying machine. "But we're soldiers. There's a difference." The Guardian's lights flickered and went out. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of small fires burning in the debris. In his command center, High Commander Vextar stared at his screens in absolute silence. His aide was making small, whimpering sounds. Around the galaxy, military leaders sat frozen as they watched the impossible become reality. The Combat Crucible's main computer began making announcements that it had never been programmed to make. Test. Subjects have defeated the Ultimate Guardian. Test subjects have completed all challenges. Test subjects have succeeded. The computer paused, as if it couldn't believe its own words. Combat Crucible test. Complete. Time. 3 hours, 42 minutes, 17 seconds. Status. First completion in facility history. Captain Chen activated her communicator. "Command, this is Chen. Mission accomplished. The Crucible has been completed." From space stations and military academies across the galaxy came the sound of absolute silence. Then, slowly, a new sound began to spread, the sound of applause. But not everyone was applauding. In the deepest levels of military and government facilities throughout galactic space, emergency meetings were being called. The humans had done more than complete an impossible test. They had proved that everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare was wrong. High Commander Vextar stood up from his command chair. His legs felt unsteady. In 3 hours and 42 minutes, 12 creatures from an unknown planet had destroyed the foundation of galactic military thinking. "Sir?" his aide asked quietly. "What do we do now?" Vextar looked at his screens where the 12 humans were helping each other treat their minor injuries and salvaging useful equipment from the wreckage they had created. "We learn," Vextar said finally. "We learn everything we can from them. Because if 12 humans can do this to our greatest fortress, imagine what they could do to our enemies." In the final chamber of the Combat Crucible, Captain Chen looked around at the destruction her team had caused. They had turned the galaxy's ultimate test into a demolition project. "So," Rodriguez said, sitting down heavily on a piece of debris, "what do we do for an encore?" Chen smiled. "We go home and tell Earth that we've been invited to join the Galactic Defense Corps." "Think they'll be surprised?" asked Santos. "I think they'll be proud," Chen replied. "We just proved that humans don't." 3 days after the humans completed the Combat Crucible, High Commander Vextar stood in the wreckage of the final chamber. Engineering teams from across the galaxy had come to study what remained of the Ultimate Guardian. They found pieces of technology that had been damaged in ways their creators never thought possible. "Sir," his aide reported, "the repair estimates are in. It would be cheaper to build a completely new facility than to fix this one." Vextar nodded slowly. He had expected this. The humans hadn't just beaten the Crucible, they had systematically dismantled it. Every challenge room showed signs of creative destruction. Every security system had been bypassed or destroyed. The facility looked like it had been attacked by an army of engineers with unlimited explosives. "What is the status of the human delegation?" Vexitar asked. "They are in the diplomatic quarters, sir. Captain Chen requested a meeting with you at your convenience." Vexitar almost smiled. After destroying the galaxy's most challenging military test, the humans were being polite about scheduling meetings. These creatures continued to surprise him. He found Captain Chen in the station's main conference room, studying a holographic display of the Crucible's damage. She looked up when he entered and stood respectfully. "Hi, Commander," she said. "Thank you for seeing us." "Captain Chen," Vextar replied, taking a seat across from her. "I believe congratulations are in order. Your species is now officially A member of the Galactic Defense Corps. Chen nodded. We're honored, but I suspect you didn't come here just to give us membership cards. Vextar leaned back in his chair. You are correct. I came here because I need to understand something. For 3,000 years, the combat crucible tested the greatest warriors in the galaxy. All of them failed. Then 12 humans walk in and destroy it in less than 4 hours. How? Chen was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Hi, Commander, may I ask you a question first? Of course. What was the crucible really designed to test? Vextar blinked in surprise. It was designed to find the greatest warriors in the galaxy, warriors worthy of joining our military forces. No, Chen said gently. It was designed to find Zephyrian warriors. Warriors who think like Zephyrians, fight like Zephyrians, and solve problems like Zephyrians. The words hit Vextar like a physical blow. I do not understand. Chen activated the holographic display, showing footage from various species' attempts at the crucible. Look at how every species approached the challenges. They all use the same basic methods: direct confrontation, individual heroics, overwhelming force. They were all trying to prove they were strong enough to join your military. Yes, that is what warriors do. That's what Zephyrian warriors do, Chen corrected. Humans approach problems differently. We use teamwork, creativity, and what some might call cheating. We don't try to prove we're stronger than our enemies. We try to make it so their strength doesn't matter. Vextar stared at the footage, seeing it with new eyes. Every failed attempt followed the same pattern because every species had tried to meet Zephyrian expectations. Your people succeeded, he said slowly, because you ignored our expectations completely. We succeeded because we treated it like a problem to be solved instead of a test to be passed, Chen said. We weren't trying to prove anything to you. We were trying to get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. Over the next several hours, Chen explained the human approach to warfare. It wasn't about honor or individual prowess. It was about completing objectives with minimum casualties and maximum efficiency. If that meant cutting through walls instead of using doors, so be it. If that meant attacking power systems instead of fighting robots, that was fine too. We have a saying on Earth, Chen told him. Work smarter, not harder. Vextar left the meeting with his worldview fundamentally changed. He had always believed that military strength came from superior weapons, better training, and stronger warriors. The humans had proved that the greatest strength came from thinking differently than your enemies expected. Within a week, emergency meetings were being held in military academies throughout the galaxy. The Crucible's destruction had sent shockwaves through every defense force. If humans could dismantle their greatest fortress so easily, what did that mean for galactic security? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. 2 months after the Crucible incident, the galaxy faced its first major crisis with human involvement. A hostile alien species called the Devourers had been attacking outer colonies with technology that seemed immune to conventional weapons. 3 different galactic fleets had tried to stop them using traditional tactics. All 3 fleets had been destroyed. High Command decided to give the humans a chance. Captain Chen, now promoted to colonel, was given command of a small task force that included her original 12 soldiers plus equipment and support staff. They were sent to the Outer Rim to face an enemy that had proven unbeatable. The Devourers' ships were massive, heavily armored, and protected by energy shields that could deflect any known weapon. Their battle tactics were simple: approach, overwhelm, with superior firepower, and consume everything in their path. Colonel Chen studied the enemy for exactly 6 days. Then she contacted High Command with her assessment. We can stop them, she reported. But we're going to need some unconventional support. The humans' plan was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of meeting the Devourers in direct combat, they set a trap. Using mining ships, they hollowed out several large asteroids and filled them with explosives. The asteroids were positioned along the Devourers' projected path and disguised as natural debris. When the enemy fleet arrived, they ignored the harmless space rocks completely. The explosions that followed could be seen from 3 star systems away, but the humans weren't finished. While the surviving Devourer ships were still recovering from the asteroid trap, human boarding parties used their small size and mobility to infiltrate the enemy vessels through maintenance ports and waste disposal systems. Instead of fighting the Devourers directly, the humans disabled their ships from the inside. They cut power cables, sabotaged navigation systems, and filled the ventilation systems with sleeping gas. Within hours, the mighty Devourer fleet was helpless. "Impossible," reported the Devourer commander as his flagship was boarded. "How did such small beings defeat us?" "Same way we beat everything else," Rodriguez replied, placing the alien under arrest. "We didn't play by your rules." News of the victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. The humans had defeated an enemy that traditional galactic forces couldn't touch. Military leaders everywhere began asking the same question. How many other impossible problems could be solved if they started thinking like humans? 6 months later, the Galactic Defense Corps announced the permanent closure of the combat crucible. In its place, they established something new, the Human Training Center. High Commander Vextar, now working closely with the human military advisors, explained the change to his staff. "For 3,000 years, we tested warriors by seeing if they could think like us. From now on, we will train our warriors to think like humans." The first class of alien soldiers to attend human training was an eye-opening experience for everyone involved. Instead of learning to fight harder, they learned to fight smarter. Instead of meeting challenges head-on, they learned to find alternatives. Instead of accepting that some problems were unsolvable, they learned to change the problems. Colonel Chen, now the Director of Tactical Innovation, watched as Zephyrian soldiers practiced the same techniques her team had used in the Crucible. They were learning to use explosives creatively, to attack infrastructure instead of enemies, and to work as coordinated teams instead of individual heroes. "It's strange," one of her instructors commented. 6 months ago, the galaxy thought we were primitive. Now they're sending their best soldiers to learn from us." Chen smiled. "They were never primitive or advanced. They were just different. The galaxy's problem wasn't lack of strength, it was lack of imagination." The changes spread beyond military applications. Human problem-solving techniques began appearing in engineering projects, scientific research, and even diplomatic negotiations. The galaxy discovered that humans had a unique talent for finding solutions that no one else had considered. Trade routes that had been impossible to establish due to natural hazards were opened using human engineering techniques. Scientific problems that had puzzled researchers for centuries were solved by human scientists who approached them from unexpected angles. Diplomatic conflicts that had lasted for generations were resolved by human negotiators who refused to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. 1 year after the Crucible's destruction, High Commander Vexitar received a report that made him pause in wonder. Galaxy-wide military casualties had dropped by 60%. Enemy forces that had seemed unstoppable were being defeated regularly. Previously impossible missions were now routine. The humans had done more than join the Galactic Defense Corps. They had revolutionized it. "Sir," his aide reported, "we have received another request for human military advisors. The Centauri Federation is facing a problem they claim is unsolvable." Vextar looked out the window of his office at the construction crews.